Every time we visit Dreamworld, it seems to be a little different, and it's hard to know whether this is good or bad. Dreamworld is a frequently changing and dynamic theme park located on the Gold Coast near Brisbane, Australia, known for its high thrills and, oddly enough, tigers. When we last visited, it was labelled as the biggest theme park in the country, and whilst its physical size hasn't changed, the park has made some interesting choices which has led to the removal of several iconic attractions, which are signature to the Dreamworld experience, whilst only topping up this list with a few new rides. So with time, has Dreamworld matured into a world-class icon? Or might management's shaky hands cause this house of cards to topple over? I'm Dom, and this is ReviewTyme's review from January 2022 of Dreamworld on the Gold Coast, Australia. Family rides, 6 out of 10. Dreamworld has an eclectic mix of attractions that isn't particularly standard for what the park is trying to achieve, and the result leads to some excellent rides with some unfortunately missed necessities. Similar to parks like Disneyland, a lot of the attractions on offer at Dreamworld are able to be experienced by the whole family, whilst also having specific attractions for all ages across the board. ABC Kids Land offers gentle and tame attractions for the youngest in the group. DreamWorks Experience steps it up for those looking for something a little more thrilling but still kid-friendly, and then you reach Dreamworld's Bread and Butter, their thrill rides. Almost all of these bigger attractions have a minimum height requirement of 130 centimeters, which is roughly the height of an average 8-year-old, which means that if they're brave enough, then they're able to do attractions such as Steel Taipan and the Giant Drop. But one of the standout family rides would easily have to be Sky Voyager, which simulates flying around Australia on a state-of-the-art moving platform. It's comparable to the soaring rides at many Disney theme parks, and whilst not as good, would still blow the mind of any family member who hasn't experienced something like this before. Though, as I mentioned before, there are some missing necessities. After the removal of their log flume attraction and the Wiggles Big Red Car ride, Dreamworld is in dire need of another water-based ride and a themed dark ride to really elevate the theme park. There is an opportunity to combine these two elements with something similar in nature to Splash Mountain, but until Dreamworld gets these, it's losing a critical competitive edge to its local and international market in regards to family attractions. Thrill rides, 7 out of 10. Dreamworld has always placed a large emphasis on its thrill rides, and many Australians will remember their Big X Thrill Rides campaigns, which boasted an impressive lineup of attractions. Unfortunately, Dreamworld has lost a few of these thrill rides since our last review, which sadly includes Tower of Terror and, for some not so sadly, Buzzsaw. This does make the park feel a little lacking, but what it's missing it makes up for with its strong remainders and recent big additions. Giant Drop is easily the best thrill ride on the Gold Coast by far, and the Claw, a swinging pendulum attraction, continues to impress to this day. Rides such as the Gold Coaster and Mick Doohan's Moto Coaster aren't anything to write home about, but they're good fun with relatively low height requirements, making them great family coasters. Other thrills let you choose your intensity, such as Pandemonium with a soft and hard style, and Tailspin, which lets you pilot your own mini plane. I've seen people who just enjoy the view, myself included, or those who spend the entire time spinning and it looks legitimately exhausting. Despite a relatively large collection, I've always thought that Dreamworld has lacked a real showstopper. But the park has seemingly found that competitive edge in the form of Steel Taipan, their brand new Mac-launched roller coaster. Whilst its layout is nearly identical to that of Blue Fire at Europa Park, this iteration of the ride boasts a surprisingly impressive triple launch that is guaranteed to wow many guests. It's not as intimidating as DC Rivals or as forceful on the launch as Superman Escape down the road at Movie World, but the ride caps off an impressive collection of thrill rides. Similarly to what Movie World did with DC Rivals, I believe that Dreamworld is one more impressive, unique roller coaster away from really getting themselves on the map. But otherwise, most thrill seekers should have a blast at this park. Experiences, 6 out of 10. At one point in history, Dreamworld had a tagline of so many worlds in one, and I still believe that rings true today. The park doesn't have just rides, but features animals, an attached but now separately ticketed water park, Tiger Island, an area dedicated to First Nations history and culture, another dedicated to Australian outback culture, and much more. I honestly believe out of all of the Australian theme parks, Dreamworld is the most complete package. Which makes it all the more disappointing that when we visited, it's clear that Dreamworld isn't particularly running at full steam after the pandemic. Now, none of what we mentioned has been removed, it's just that with a lack of domestic and international tourism, it's hard for the park to justify having these additions open. This leaves the back portion of the theme park feeling relatively lifeless and forgotten. But when it's fully operational, it is a very vibrant and entertaining part of the park. If all of this was open and operational, I would be comfortable giving experiences a 7 or even an 8. And in time, this will hopefully be the case. But it's important to stress this lower score because we can't cater to the ideal scenario, and it's something you should be aware of before planning your trip. Theme parks are dynamic, things are expected to change, and it's important to do your research to taper your own expectations. Thankfully though, Tiger Island is still being presented as expected, and it's great to be able to sit down, relax, and enjoy the tigers and their shows. The park stresses the ethical nature of these performances and that the tigers are only showcasing natural behavior. They are not required to do any tricks that go beyond this, and they're not forced to do anything that they don't want to on the day. This makes the showcase all the more exciting because it generally changes every time based on the attitude of the tiger that is part of the show on that day. Beyond this, Dreamworld also offers an upcharge experience on Steel Taipan, which is a free spinning seat attached to the back of one of their trains. This is easily one of the most intense and spectacular roller coaster experiences that you can ever have, and whilst it's pretty pricey at 25 Australian dollars, I still think it's not to be missed. Entertainment. 4 out of 10. Tiger Island could easily fall under entertainment, but in terms of entertaining shows that you just sit and enjoy, Dreamworld really doesn't offer much else. They do have roaming and sporadic entertainment, which we had a blast interacting with, which is all nice to have, but not something I'd go out of my way for. Some days they also offer a Madagascar character show in the DreamWorks area, but that, unfortunately, wasn't offered when we visited, and to be fair, it isn't something we probably would have seen even if it was. In saying that, keep an eye on Dreamworld's offerings for when you plan on going. It's not uncommon for the park to bring in big names like the Wiggles or even the magician Constantino that do free shows as part of your admission, as well as special events that have their own themed entertainment, which are usually offered during peak times like school holidays and can really add to the value of your day. By the way, if you're finding this review entertaining, be sure to leave a like and subscribe as we have more of these reviews on the way with a special trip planned in a couple of months. Operations. 8 out of 10. Dreamworld is fast, efficient, and friendly. It does help that it's not the busiest park in the country, but despite having lesser attendance levels to that of Movie World or SeaWorld, they still prioritize the guest experience. When we visited on our first day, the line for Steel Taipan had gotten rather long in the morning, and so maintenance came to assist in bringing in the second train for the attraction. We had to wait roughly 10 minutes for this to happen, but what it meant was that Steel Taipan was basically a walk-on for the entire day. In fact, almost all attractions when we visited were walk-ons or short waits, even when other nearby parks were seeing waits of over an hour for their popular attractions. This means that you don't have to base your day around the crowds and can instead just do things at your own pace. Now, this can lead to you going too hard too fast and making yourself sick, but it also means that you can leave Dreamworld after a day feeling satisfied. It gives them a massive leg up to the competition, because if you return home seeing that you were able to experience Dreamworld's brand new roller coaster as many times as you wanted and could easily walk onto anything else, then that generates great word of mouth. I wouldn't be surprised if this was intentionally part of Dreamworld's operational strategy, but nonetheless, it's awesome as a guest. Theming. 5 out of 10. The park is nicely decorated and well presented, but in terms of theming, it's a solid pass at best. The thematic elements of the park have not been its priority for the last 2 decades, which means that you've got an eclectic mix of practically everything with no cohesion between them. In saying that, Dreamworld has shown in recent years that they intend to improve this. Tiger Island is a great example. The area is lush, well-themed, and uses thematic elements that are unmatched within Australia. Similarly, Steel Taipan is very well presented, and whilst not exactly themed, they've shown a keen interest in making sure that the area is just nice to be in. Ocean Parade has consistently received thematic upgrades to bolster the area, but I still think that Sky Voyager was a massive step backwards for Dreamworld's Victorian and turn-of-the-century United States-inspired Main Street. It's unbelievably stark in contrast, which means it stands out, but not in a good way. I think you could work with the building in the future to embrace more Victorian elements and de-age it by a couple centuries or two, but I know that in a massive list of priorities for Dreamworld, retheming Sky Voyager would be way at the bottom. Merch, 7 out of 10. The park is currently celebrating its 40th birthday, and with it comes a wide selection of vintage-inspired merchandise. Now, it's no secret that I adore park and attraction-specific merch, and what was on offer was genuinely great at fairly reasonable prices. From t-shirts to stubby coolers to keyrings and plushes, there is genuinely something for everybody. The highlights to me were the Steel Taipan specific products and the 40th collection, but the rest of the lineup can just be described as nice. Dreamworld also has several branded shops like Billabong, Rip Curl, and other Aussie brands, and whilst the expectation would be that these prices are outrageous, they don't particularly seem to carry the same theme park markup that most other branded merchandise carries, which was nice when I needed a rash vest when going to White Water World. Affordability, 7 out of 10. Dreamworld isn't the most expensive park on the Gold Coast, but it's not the cheapest either. A one-day ticket starts at 99 Australian dollars, but you wouldn't buy that when their 3-day pass, which interestingly includes 6 months entry to Dreamworld, Skypoint, and seasonal access to White Water World, costs $129, and their interstate 12-month pass with in-park discounts and additional access to White Water World and Skypoint again currently costs $143 on sale or $179 at other times. There is no reason to buy that base ticket unless you just want to go for absolutely one day. Considering that most of Dreamworld's passes include White Water World, which is easily one of Australia's best water parks, the value is there in the season passes, especially if you're going more than once in a year. But it is hard to justify if you're wanting to add Dreamworld onto your trip when you're already going to the Gold Coast's other theme parks. When exploring the park, we found that food was generally good value with sizable portions and the expected theme park price markup. Steel Taipan, as mentioned before, currently has the paid edition called Tail Whip, which is the one-of-a-kind free spinning seat at the rear of the coaster train. This provides one of the most incredible roller coaster experiences in the world, but at $25, it's just on the cusp of affordability. I'd recommend doing it once, but additional rides are going to set you back pretty quickly. Dreamworld does also offer other paid experiences, such as being able to interact with their many animals, but it's worthwhile checking out these as they fluctuate in prices depending on the season. Atmosphere, 7 out of 10. We visited towards the end of the January school holidays, which is one of the busiest periods throughout the year for the theme parks on the Gold Coast, and surprisingly, Dreamworld was rather quiet, which meant that nearly every single attraction around the park was a walk-on experience. With nearly every attraction open thanks to management's continued efforts to increase the park's operations and ride reliability, this helped to make Dreamworld feel vibrant and lively, despite the fact that at times we were some of the only people in our parts of the park. This is a common occurrence for the theme park when talking to people who go to the parks more frequently, but I wouldn't always rely on this when visiting, especially during peak periods. On top of this, I've always found the staff at Dreamworld to be excellent, and our 2022 trip was no exception. Everybody wears a smile, treats you with respect, and genuinely seems to be enjoying their time at the park as a worker, which really bolsters the atmosphere. On top of this, the theme park also has stray performers, such as an escaped prisoner who kept on bumping into us and making our group laugh whilst heckling us with an impressively consistent story that seemed to be made up just for us, and it was a highlight every time we encountered them. Despite the lively nature of Dreamworld's bustling core, the park's physical size gives you the opportunity to relax and take in the scenery as well. And all of this combines for a real do-it-your-way atmosphere. Want to ride any ride? There's barely any wait, why not? Want to go to Whitewater World? Sure, it's only 5 minutes walk. Want to sit around for a bit? You're in no rush, just take your time. This alone makes visiting Dreamworld a special experience, and whilst I guarantee it won't last forever, I think it's worth experiencing it whilst you can before the inevitable crowds return. Services! 5 out of 10. Offering a multitude of paid and complimentary services, Dreamworld falls flat in the middle when it comes to service expectations. The park at times can be difficult to navigate due to its sheer size, and areas like Spaghetti Junction, which utilize existing path layouts from attractions that no longer exist, creating an awkward sense of flow, so we highly recommend keeping a map on you at all times. A lot of the paid extras on offer at Dreamworld, like Ride Express, don't really feel necessary, and instead it feels more like a relic from times gone by. Unlimited Ride Express will set you back $129, but with everything either a walk-on or a minor wait, it just doesn't feel worth it to pay almost the same amount as a season pass for instant access to any rides. An annual photo pass is more affordable at $50, but unless you're really on top of capturing your photos from roaming photographers and on-ride photo booths, it may be worth passing on. However, you do only need one of these per group, so if you're going as a group, just buy the one and then share the photos around digitally afterwards. Something to keep in mind as well is the weather. Almost all of Dreamworld's attractions are outdoors, which means that when it rains, expect to get wet. Usually they'll keep these attractions operating in light to medium rainfall, but it's typical for the attractions to go offline when it's storming for everybody's safety. Despite a shift in direction from Australia's biggest theme park and thrill capital, Dreamworld is a few feature attractions away from re-maturing into a must-do theme park when visiting Australia and even just the Gold Coast. Not everybody will agree with the park's actions, which is apparent with its rocky attendance. But for once in recent history, it seems like Dreamworld has an inspired vision of what it's striving to be. And if it keeps up the good work, then I have no doubt that one day this will be one of the great, if not the greatest, theme parks of Australia. Dreamworld gets a final score of 62 out of 100, with excellence in operations. For Review Time, I'm Dom. Thanks for watching, liking, and subscribing.